Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ReQuest. It is me, Captain Logan, and also I've got Austin, the Day Ghost.
How's it going?
And Austin, why don't you tell everybody what we're talking about today?
We're talking about LA Confidential, or as I like to call it, The Nice Guys Senior.
Yeah, so you just want to launch right into that. All Austin wants to talk about is how this parallels how this is a lot like The Nice Guys.
Well, not just The Nice Guys, just Shane Black in general.
Yeah, there is quite a bit of Shane Black in this movie. That's an excellent observation there, boyo.
Thank you. Capo.
So this had you ever seen this or knew anything about it? Did you know what this movie was?
I've heard of it, but that's about it. And
Same here.
I think this is one of those movies that like always comes up when people talk about like newer noir kind of detective movies. And that's about all I knew.
I assumed that this was a lot more. I mean, it is technically kind of neo-noir, right? Like there's kind of a Chinatown thing going on with this movie, I guess. But I always thought that it was like a contemporary set movie, and that it was more along the lines of some of the other like early mid-90s crime thrillers that we've done. I didn't realize that it was a stylized period piece. Or I should say stylish period piece.
Well, and the thumbnail on Disney Plus is like, look, it's Sin City with Kevin Spacey and Kim Basinger.
Oh, that's not what it is at all.
It's like it looks a lot like that, yeah.
I mean,
like that kind of noir look.
Yes, it's got noirish sensibilities, and it's throwing back to old Hollywood to some degree, but partly just because it's also about old Hollywood. So like it would be really easy to go, oh, look how old school this movie is in how it's shot and plotted and stuff to some degree. I mean, it's also like real gritty in its way too, and pulls no punches in the realism and violence. And I just lost my ring, just shot at my face.
What I got from the Disney Plus like little thumbnail when I was clicking on it was this is going to be like a hard-boiled detective movie with Kevin Spacey as like a really gruff detective, and Kim Basinger is like the femme fatale, like maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see. And none of that was really correct.
That could have been cool too, I guess, but that's not what it was. It's more interesting than that. Certainly.
Well, it's funny because Russell Crowe is kind of the character that I was expecting Kevin Spacey to be.
Yeah.
It's like there is some of that. It's just not as advertised.
Yeah, which is interesting because the other two main guys in this movie are a lot gruffer, but Kevin Spacey's character is the like less moralistic of the three.
I don't know if
he's the guy that's more sold his soul at this point.
I don't know if you had this, but he reminded me a lot of Bullock from Earth One. Like he's obviously more corrupt, but he's that kind of.
I didn't have that thought.
He's that kind of like Hollywoodized detective.
Well, and pardon me. You're thinking about Batman a lot when you see things like this, because you keep telling me how badly you want the Batman sequel to tackle Hollywood, like the seedier parts of Hollywood.
Yeah, because I want them to do something with that with Clayface and bring in Julie Madison, because she was an actress.
Yeah.
You could do something really cool with that.
It's a really good idea. You should just go to Hollywood and start pitching it, because you won't stop talking to me about it.
Be like, James Gunn, Damien sucks. Let me tell you about this idea instead. He can still be in it. This is going to be with the focus.
This movie was requested by Super Billy on Patreon, so thanks a lot to him. And let's go ahead and get even further into it. Austin, would you go ahead and give us a somewhat brief plot synopsis? It might be tougher with this one because this is a complex story.
Yeah, no kidding. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Well, first of all, we keep saying that noirish and crime drama. What what genre would you really fit this into?
I would say it's just like a detective movie. That's what I would place it.
Yeah, a conspiracy thriller.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Well, what happens in this movie, Austin?
Okay, so you have Guy Pearce playing Val Kilmer and Russell Crowe, and they are the nice guys.
Dude, that was so distracting all the way through the movie where I kept going, I know that's not Val Kilmer, but I keep seeing Val Kilmer. And it's only a couple of years after Batman Forever, and it's exactly like the age that Kilmer is then, and he looks a lot like him.
Well, and it's weird. The thing I had with it was because I kept going, oh, okay, that actor's in a Shane Black movie, that actor's in a Shane Black movie, and Guy Pearce is the main villain of Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
And he's acting like Val Kilmer, who's one of the co-leads of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He's like a doofer.
Oh man, I didn't even know that.
It's like, that's weird.
And I'll say, because I always have to have some sort of Star Trek connection, right? I was distracted a little bit on the Star Trek end because this is 1 year after First Contact, and you've got James Cromwell, who, of course, is a major character in First Contact. He's Ephraim Cochrane. And then you've got a score by Jerry Goldsmith. So this might have been the very next movie Goldsmith scored. I don't know. And there are motifs that are very similar, but in really different sequences. Like, I'm hearing horn work that sounds a lot like when the Borg are just walking around on a deck, and I'm like, my brain's going to explode. Like, what I'm hearing is not going with what I'm seeing.
You're watching, like, Danny DeVito take pictures of people making out, and you're like, what? The Borg are coming?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Well, and that was the other distraction I had, too, where I couldn't stop thinking about Batman. Because we had Kim Basinger, and we've got Danny DeVito, and I don't think they have scenes together.
No.
Well, there's one scene where Danny DeVito is taking pictures outside of a window of her having sex with
Val Kilmer.
Not Val Kilmer, yeah.
It's really just a lot of Batman stuff, too.
And you know, like it's really tempting for me sometimes when our main focus is superhero movies to be like, oh, look how distracting it is that you've got all these people from all these superhero movies. It's like, these days everybody's been in a superhero movie, but I did have that real hard this time because almost every principal cast movie was in a major, like, big two superhero movies. So, like, you had Kim Basinger, and so you've got I'll just do the character names. That annoys people. Let's do that. So we got Vicky Vale. We've got the Penguin. We've got the real Mandarin.
Yeah, Aldrich Killian.
Aldrin. Is that his name? Aldrin?
Yeah, Aldrich.
Aldridge. There it is. I was like, that's not right. What is it? Killian. And then you have Jor-El from Man of Steel.
/ Zeus.
Oh, yes. Who could forget that? I was trying. Daniver says this is definitely not the next movie after First Contact that Goldsmith did. I mean, he probably was doing 4 or 5 movies a year.
Yeah,
so,
probably.
No, I thought better of that after I said it, but I'm like, I don't know how many movies he was making a year at that point. But yeah, good call.
Nah, you're just being a fraud.
And then well, that's par for the course, I guess. And then who and then Kevin Spacey. So we got Lex Luthor.
Captain Stacy, yeah, who's just Captain Stacy.
Well, no, not I mean that too. Sorry, but I was also saying Kevin Spacey.
Oh,
is Lex
yeah,
Luthor.
It's Lex Luthor. So I think you said.
And then yes, you have Captain Stacy,
who's the captain of the police.
Who's the captain of the police in this?
Mm-hmm.
Captain Stacy in Spider-Man 3, not Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Yeah, because it was killing me for like the
Is
first little bit.
Is everybody keeping all this straight? Do we have all of it?
Anybody writing this down? No, early on I was like, who is this guy? Like, I know this actor from something. What is it? And after a while I was like, oh, wait a minute. He's playing the same character as what I'm thinking of. He's Captain Stacy.
Yeah, just a horrible, corrupt version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Although now I wish that when he played Captain Spacey, he was Spacey. I'm gonna keep doing that. Captain Stacy, he was also doing a really slight Irish accent to the point where you're not actually sure if it's supposed to be an Irish accent until he starts saying boyo, and then he lays it on like slightly thicker as he goes, like exponentially thicker. I found that really distracting. Sorry, I will totally let you get to plot synopsis. But now that we're on Cromwell, can I just make this point really quick? Cromwell is great in everything. Except for the movie that I'm about to mention where he totally phones it in. And that's totally fair. But I did have the same thing with him that I did with him in Jurassic House. Because
I didn't even realize he was in that.
yes, he is the business partner for Hammond that we were never told about, that owns the house, that has the Jurassic house. And in the couple of scenes he is in that, he does a very thin, very non-committal British accent. And it's exactly the same thing he's doing here, where it's like, it seems like his approach is, I'm not great at accents, and I don't want to make it sound corny or unrealistic, so I'm just gonna, like, put in a little twinge of it here and there, and it just comes, or be really slight and subtle about it. But it's not consistent. There are scenes where it's not there at all. And we have the same thing here, and this is like a Oscar-worthy kind of movie. This movie is fantastic. Cromwell is fantastic in it, and he's very menacing, and he's very scary once you realize, spoiler alert, that he is the big bad guy, and is basically running all the crime in L.A., and the whole time I'm going, you're not Irish, stop it.
This is the man who killed your uncle.
They should have rewritten him so that he just wasn't Irish. Like, besides the whole Boyo thing, he didn't need to be. There's nothing about that character where it was, like, essential for him to be Irish. Unless he was based on a real-life character, real-life person who was, maybe. I don't know that. Because there's a lot of stuff in this movie that is... like, it's historical fiction, right? It's looking at real-life occurrences, if not any real-life people. Like, the big beating that happens at the beginning of the movie is a real thing that actually happened in the 50s.
Okay.
But I don't know if any of these characters are supposed to be really based on real characters.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I didn't look too far into it, so I didn't know that. But interesting.
And the tabloid rag is a real rag, but was renamed for the movie, but was kept the same for the book, and it was called Confidential, which is why it has that title. But I think but in this it's called Hush Hush. Mm-hmm. But it's probably for the best that the movie wasn't called L.A. Hush Hush.
Because then we'd really be comparing it to Batman.
It's weird how this movie had two people running around with bandages over their heads.
And one of them was DeVito. That was weird. He's like 4 feet tall, Hush.
But I do think, especially given the ending, that the title still works. Like, it still means something. It's not like Perfect Blue, where I'm like, this movie's amazing. I don't know what that title means.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Daniver says, and I was about to mention this is an adaptation of the James Ellroy novel of the same name. I believe the character is probably Irish there. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but I'm like, change it for the movie. He's so non-committal with that accent.
Yeah, it's funny. It never really jumped out at me, and I'm like normally like a stickler for stuff like that, so that's funny.
I was really distracted by it, but I think part of it was probably because of Jurassic House.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know him like more as an actor too.
Yeah, I've seen.
I just know him as Captain Stacy, and he's in like 2 scenes in that movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've still never seen Babe, and that's what put him on the map, and he won an Oscar for that.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah.
I've still never sat down and watched that, and that was just a year or two before this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think.
Yeah, it's sometime in the 90s.
But I am curious to look at that novel now, because it apparently has like even a lot more winding threads.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense for a book.
It had like
a lot of
8 different winding threads, and the writers here decided in order to take it to screen, the only way you could do it is eliminate everything. Like, they said literally, we took out every scene that wasn't about these 3 guys. And I think that was really smart, having not read that book.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure this reads really great.
Oh, did he not? Daniver says he didn't win an Oscar. He was nominated, though. You mean for Babe? I thought he won the Oscar for Babe. Stone Gassman makes note of Captain Logan never seeing Babe. So that will probably
Stone
end up...
Gassman will remember this.
Yeah, that's going to go on the request, because Stone Gassman is a patron and has given us lots of movies to review.
I've also never
Thanks,
seen
man.
Babe. My uncle was obsessed with it when I was a kid, but I missed it.
That'll be the very last request we ever do, so that we can finish this series with That'll Do, Pig.
Just delete the channel now. It's game over, man. Game over.
That's too good of a last line, right? To like, you finish a video with that, and then nobody ever sees you again. You just like, That'll do, Pig.
I guess.
Anyway, so what happens in this movie, Austin?
Okay. What does happen in this movie? So like I said, you got Guy Pearce as Val Kilmer and Russell Crowe, and they're both detectives. You also have Kevin Spacey, who's like a corrupt detective, who, like I said earlier, is kind of like the Hollywoodized cop. Like, he works with Danny DeVito, who runs this magazine, and they do a lot of, like, they arrest people and then take pictures with him and the criminals, for the articles and whatnot.
And he also moonlights as a consultant for a procedural detective show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So
which was part of what reminded me of the Harvey Bullock thing, because he's like a TV cop before he comes to Gotham.
Oh, I forgot about. See, I haven't read that in years. I forgot all about that. Good call.
And yeah, so there's a brawl.
Now I want to stop and talk about Kevin Spacey, but we'll do that later. Because as soon as I saw it, I was like,
put a pin in it.
I was like, I don't think I've watched anything with Kevin Spacey in it since he got canceled. And I was like, oh, it's going to be really weird to watch this. And it was. And I'll talk about that later. But anyway, so yeah, I was kind of surprised that Kevin Spacey's character was really the big link to Hollywood. I mean, I guess you also have that with the two guys pursuing the prostitute, just in that she's in a prostitute ring of women that are made up to look like Hollywood actresses. So, like, the seedy Hollywood underbelly thing is always around us, but a lot less than I expected.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was, I expected the plot to be much more about Hollywood than it ended up being. Kind of like The Nice Guys, where that's all about, like, the porn industry in LA, and obviously there's kind of none of that.
See,
and,
it's not that movie, okay?
I know, but there's so many.
It doesn't have that. It doesn't have helicopters. It can't be a Shane Black movie if it doesn't have helicopters. Yes, it does. It's a Shane Black movie. Now, I haven't seen it in 7 years, and I only saw it the one time, but it's a Shane Black movie, so I know there was a helicopter, and you just missed it.
He spliced like little images of helicopters into frames that just kind of flashed by. That's how he got them in there.
Somebody's looking at a magazine, like flipping through, and it's like Helicopters Monthly. Or...
Exactly. Yes, there's a brawl that happens, and I keep wanting to call him Val Kilmer now. Guy Pearce. He reports Kevin Spacey for being a corrupt cop, and that kind of gets him on the outs, and also puts Kevin Spacey in kind of like the doghouse for cops, because he's able to kind of worm his way through it, where he takes like people higher than him out, so he gets to remain a cop, and then there's this like big like kind of mass murder thing in the Night Owl, because we got to fit in another comic booky thing, right? The Night Owl Club or cafe.
I wondered if that stuff was partly why Super Billy asked us to do this, just because it has so many connections to the superhero movies and comic book things, and then also thematically it has. It deals with a lot of things that we're constantly talking about with superhero fiction. I mean, Guy Pearce's character is just a vigilante who happens to be a cop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's also just like a cop movie,
vengeance versus cliche. Justice. And sure, no, absolutely. But I couldn't help but be reminded of some of that stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because obviously you get stuff like that in like Lethal Weapon and like Die Hard and whatnot.
I guess that's the thing is I never think of myself as a like crime thriller guy or a or like like a fan of organized crime stories, but because I'm a big Batman fan, that's a lot of what I've read.
Yeah, I have a hard time getting into crime fiction, but it's mostly when it's about the criminals. When it's like detective stuff like this, it's easy for me to get into.
Yeah, and I'm finding more and more that I actually really like that stuff, and I should pursue more of it. Because like in the last couple of years, I've gotten a lot more into true crime, like documentaries and things. And so
You're becoming a soccer mom.
yeah, I'm getting to that place. Yeah, and so it's starting to bleed over into my fiction a little bit. Where like some of the stuff that people have requested, especially I've really latched onto, and I've wanted to move out to other things. Forgetting what now, we reviewed something not too long ago that was kind of in that vein. I can't think of what, but like Zodiac, I really liked a lot.
Well, we did Silence of the Lambs. That wasn't like a request.
Oh, that's true.
That fits in that.
Yeah, that does fit in that. But then I don't know. There's something else I was thinking of. That isn't coming to me. It's not important. But anyway,
that George Reeves movie. I was thinking about that a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like another Hollywood kind of detective thing.
Well, and then of course I was also thinking about Tarantino quite a bit while I was watching this, and I like you can't tell me he didn't see this movie and wasn't a fan of it. And I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I know that's probably a very different movie from this, but it's probably kind of adjacent, right? Like,
so it is very different. But especially like I don't know if you watched the credits and like some of the TV stuff, I was like, oh, this is like some of the TV stuff in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but they are very different.
Oh, I actually, I should also preface with this real quick and say I was in a rush when I watched this movie, so I'm a little concerned that some stuff won't stick with me as well as I would hope. Like I really want to see this again. It's very complex. There's a lot going on, and I'm sure I missed some things. But I actually turned it off right after the credits started.
I was about to, and then Disney Plus was like skip credits, and I was like, that normally only does that when there's an after credits scene. So I hit it, and I was like, oh. It wasn't like anything crazy. Like it was just like the TV show that Kevin Spacey was working on, and then it's got like a little like in memory of him credit. On the show, so it's not like anything crazy. But
I missed that.
But I was like, oh, this like seeing the kind of like logo of the show. I was like, oh, this is very Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because he's having a lot of fun with like the '60s TV shows, and obviously this is before that. But yeah, that kind of old TV.
I'm glad they did that because that was a thing that I was kind of surprised we didn't get at all. Like we don't really know what the show looks like. We have one scene. Where we see like the tail end of a scene where they're just ripping off other shows, like just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like a police badge, and it's like whatever his name is, like it's like Lieutenant whatever. And I was like, oh, that's fun. That's about it.
But anyway, so what else happens in this movie?
What else happens? So all of these people get killed, and then it becomes a detective movie in which they have to figure out who killed them. And there's lots of twists and turns, and Kim Basinger is she's a prostitute, right?
Yep.
And she gets in a relationship with Russell Crowe, and then there's some kind of over the top, not like over the top like scene chewing, but I just mean like above everyone else kind of villain stuff going on. The master manipulator is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
With Captain Stacy, who is trying to kind of clean up the stuff that he's been doing and kind of taking over crime, because he's also Captain Stacy, the Kingpin.
That's true, and he's a pretty good Kingpin.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. No, like you said, he is very intimidating in this.
Yeah, he's kind of against type, at least from most of what I've seen from Cromwell. Like, I've seen him, like was that from Cochran, play kind of rough around the edges kinds of characters, but not like straight up, like psychos.
Yeah, because right from the get-go, I was like, okay, this guy is not...
Or I shouldn't say psycho, but... just a really bad guy. Just like you said, master manipulator, master criminal.
Yeah, exactly. No, because right from
We'll
the
kill
get-go, I was
we'll
like, this
kill
guy.
anybody who gets in his way, and he's smart about it. Unlike the Kingpin in the current MCU shows, he's smart about it.
Yeah, exactly. No, right from the get-go, I was like, this guy is not all good, but like, I don't think he's bad, but like, he's definitely morally ambiguous right from the
Well,
get-go.
everybody's morally ambiguous, which is why that was such a surprise.
Mhm.
I didn't find very much about this movie predictable, and it kept me
Yeah, definitely.
guessing all the way to the end. And
Mhm.
I also got to say, it's a really tightly woven and tightly plotted film. And everything does come together by the end, as far as I can tell.
Mhm.
I don't think it has any, weird plot holes or easy stuff that doesn't track when you work it backwards. I We'll see if anything jumps out at me when I finally watch it a second time. But
Mhm.
it all made sense and seemed to track to me. The coolest thing I thought in the storytelling was the irony that our two main guys, because it kind of plays like a triple protagonist story until one of those protagonists dies halfway through. So it's mostly about these two guys that have really interesting contrasting backgrounds and motivations, where one of them is motivated by the death of his father and the other is motivated by his hatred for his father. And the the guy we keep calling Captain Stacy, the James Cromwell character, tries to pit them against each other in his big master manipulation plot, because one of them is sniffing them out and getting too close. And none of that was too easy. I totally bought the way that happened, with the like nickname of the guy's dad, who hurt his mother and then got away with it. The nickname of, like, horrible criminals that get away with it. I thought that whole plot device was great. And then in trying to pit them up against each other, he ends up putting them together, and they have an uneasy alliance and ultimately become friends by the end. And that was the biggest surprise to me, and I loved their individual character studies, and then the way they came together at the end. That was
Yeah, they
some,
became the Shane Black duo. They're the nice guys.
by the end, yeah. But that was a but it was spectacular storytelling. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't like any of these people at the beginning of the film, and I was at least interested, if not actually liked, several characters by the end of the film.
Mhm.
And the look of it, and the atmosphere, really drags you through until you start latching onto characters. So,
Mhm.
like, there was
See,
never a
and I.
point where I didn't want to be watching this movie, but I was like, I don't know how I feel about any of these people. And then they very quickly got interesting, even as they were deeply flawed and, like you said, morally ambiguous. But it also, like I said, helped that it is one of the most stylish and best looking period 50s things I've ever seen. Like, it's gorgeous.
Mhm. See, I was right with Russell Crowe when he was introduced, because he's introduced like ripping like a giant Santa thing off a guy's roof. I was like, this is a man I can get
Oh,
behind.
that's true. Well, and I was more at home with him, weirdly, even though he's the more violent one. But, like, what I like is that neither of them is exactly corrupt. Like, they do morally ambiguous things to further their careers, and
He's
get
like the Jack
get.
Bauer type of
That's exactly
cop.
right. Yeah, we're like, he can. It's a very extreme argument, but he can make an argument for ends justifies the means, certainly. But like, each of them is, like I said, morally ambiguous, but not corrupted like Kevin Spacey's character is.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely. No, I think part of it is that his character is like close enough to his the nice guy's character that I was kind of just already with him right from the get go.
Yeah.
And then I was with Guy Pearce right away, just because I was interested in his whole kind of going against the police, the corrupt system, and the way that he's kind of put down for it. So I thought all that was interesting right away.
Yeah, he was just from the beginning, and like I started to appreciate it, of course, but I had a bad first impression of him because it was like, he's so sanctimonious.
Yeah, that is fair.
But he's got a great look, and Guy Pearce is the kind of actor that like weirdly disappears and stuff. It took me a little while to realize who that was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When he's one of those actors that just kind of pops up in everything, and then I don't really like recognize him until like the 2010s when I start going like, wait a minute, like this is a guy that's like in things.
Yeah.
And then it's always weird for me going back where I'm like, oh yeah, like he's been around for like a long time too.
I had the same thing. I thought Iron Man 3 was the first thing I saw him in. It's probably not.
It was like the double beat of Prometheus in that for me, because they were like a few months apart, where I was like, oh, like this
He's in
guy.
Prometheus?
Yeah, he's playing Mr. Burns. He's in like old age makeup, and it's really distracting.
I've seen that movie one time also. Around the time I saw The Nice Guys.
Yeah, because they cast him because they were gonna do like scenes of him when he was younger and older, and then they cut all of the younger scenes.
It's like, what was even the point of having him in this movie?
Him walking around like like Mr. Burns. It's
They should have hired James Cromwell.
Exactly.
Okay, super chats are pouring in. We're going to go ahead and read those here in just a minute. Thank you guys for the support. Appreciate you. And I haven't said this yet. Welcome and thanks for being here if you're watching live, and appreciate you if you're watching this later on as well, of course. Austin, I want to make this point real quick, just because it's odd that it hasn't come up yet. Both Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe, this is really early in their career. This is like Russell Crowe's second movie, I think. And it might be Guy Pearce's first or second or third, but it's like it's very, very early.
Early on, yeah.
They were both newcomers to like Siskel and Ebert when they reviewed it. They were like, here's these new guys. They're both great.
Yeah, I had like a little moment where I was like, oh yeah, Russell Crowe used to be like really skinny.
Yeah, I kind of had that too.
Like dad bod Russell Crowe, which isn't an insult. Like I do think he looks good with that, but like it was funny for a second.
And it was also weird to read. I can't remember if it was the Siskel and Ebert review or if it was another like quote from another period review or something. But I read somewhere where somebody said that Kevin Spacey is cast against type, and I'm like, oh yeah, in '97 I guess so, but not later. Like, this is straight up everything he did in the last couple of, like, decade and a half before he was, dropped out of Hollywood.
Yeah, when is, like, Usual Suspects and 7? I guess 7's after this. But
that's all early 2000s, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
I don't know.
No, because Usual Suspects is before X-Men. Because that's
Bryan
Singer's first movie.
Yeah. That was probably, so that would have been right around this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
98,
like
99?
No, because he did a Stephen King movie right before X-Men.
So you're saying he might have made that before this movie?
Possibly, I don't know.
Or maybe it came out the same year.
Around the same time.
I mean, we could look it up, but, we're talking, I'm not going to right now.
Usual Suspects and 7 were both 95, says Daniverse.
Oh,
so yeah, they're both the year before.
Oh, yeah, no, I knew that. Sorry, that 7 was mid-90s. It's all coming back to me
now. You said 2000s, and I was like, whoa. Like,
I don't know.
My mind.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know why I always think that about that movie, but and I need to watch that again, because I only saw that once, and I liked that a lot. You know what? I think that was actually the movie I was thinking of earlier.
Oh, okay.
I didn't review that with you, I don't think, but I think that was a request before we branded it ReQuest.
Yeah, because I've only seen that movie like once, and it was my mom put it on and then talked through the entire movie, so I was like barely watching.
Okay, so you've sort of seen it.
I've like sort of seen it.
Yeah, well that's okay. You've sort of seen lots of things because of all the blind commentaries and watch parties we've done.
Exactly.
It's about the same like that. I mean, honestly, you and your mom should have recorded it and made it YouTube content.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have found that interesting, but maybe.
I would have found it deeply interesting, I'm sure. After some of the stories you've told me about what your mom says when you watch movies.
I mean that is true.
So real quick, and then I'll read super chats. I just wanted to say about Kevin Spacey. I was distracted by little parallels that I was noticing to real life and other things that he's been in, like later on, because he's one of those people, kind of like Bill Cosby, where I'm like, if I ever go back to that stuff, how much of like weird ironies will like kind of jump out at me, and I had that with this. One of his first lines is something along the lines of like if America knew who I really was, they wouldn't know what to do with me, or something like that. And I was like, or no, I think it's like America has no idea what the real me is. And I was like, oh wow, that's crazy. And then there are a couple scenes where he looks directly into the camera with like penetrating stare with no dialogue, exactly like Frank in House of Cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it almost feels like that starts here. Yeah, it's very strange. And then...
Well, and a lot of that stuff dates back to, like, there's stuff, like, on the set of Usual Suspects. So, like, that would have just been the year before.
Yeah.
Too, so...
No, it's through most of his career, apparently. And, I mean, I don't want to get into all of that.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, because it's got, like, you got both him and Singer. But
I just want to mention that it was just very strange how some of that jumped out at me. And then his subplot is directly dealing with all of the like secret homosexual stuff going on in Hollywood in the 50s, and like secret parties and things. And this character is not involved in any of that, but it's, I don't think, but it's weird that that he's the actor that stuff comes up around.
Yeah. No, that is weird. Yeah, so I think one of the only movies I watched like right after any of that came out was Baby Driver, because I missed it when it came out, and then I finally saw it like after that. And that was one
of the last movies he made before he got drummed out.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, because everyone told me about how great he was in that movie when it came out. And then when I finally watched it, I was like, he's terrible in this. What was anybody talking about? But then I went, okay, but is it because like I know, so I'm like, he's also a creep? Like, I don't think so, because that doesn't normally get to me with like performance stuff. And then I guess not, because when I was watching this, I was like, oh, he's fine in this. Yeah, it's definitely weird stuff, but like, I don't think
he's good at it. But I was just distracted by some of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it just hit a little too close to home, I guess, or too close to things we know about him and associate with that. But
yeah, absolutely.
Not to get into the gossip of it or whatever, but. Anyway,
not to get into the hush hush of it all.
The hush hush. Let's get into these super chats. Bob the Hun, $5 super chat, says this is a movie that also influenced a bunch of Batman comics. The actress / hooker thing certainly has, and all the stuff with Hollywood.
Yeah, going back to like, I think it's like some of that '90s stuff where like Batman would like pay money to hookers who were like working on the street to like just go off and like not have to work for the night or something.
Yeah,
we used to do that a lot with Batman.
That's true, but how much of that do you think is a direct influence from this movie specifically? Like, I bet there's some of it, but when he says a bunch of Batman comics, like I feel like some of that stuff might not have been looking at this. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Who knows? Because
there were certainly other movies and TV shows that were dealing with, seedy underbelly of Hollywood in exactly this time, and like contemporary things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure we were doing stuff with like prostitutes before then in this kind of detective work. Yeah,
but I mean, I'm sure there is some of that, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. Just everybody remember, it's Dan Schneider. That's the name he picked. Kevin Spacey is a great actor and is great in this movie. Rapist though he may be, you can't take that away, no matter how many people he's molested. Thanks for that, Dan Schneider.
I mean, at the end of the day, the worst thing about Kevin Spacey is the hypocrisy, but...
But it is an interesting, ongoing conversation that we and a lot of other people, of course, have been having around the Me Too movement. How easy is it to actually separate art from artist. Like, forget whether you're willing to go back and look at things that people that did heinous acts and were fired or arrested or whatever over it. What does it do to your viewing of it if you choose to go back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I believe in separation of artist and art. That doesn't mean I can always do it as well as I wish I could. And I didn't really understand that until people that I thought I really respected or whose work I really loved, we learned the twisted, horrible truth about them, and then I would go back and try to look at stuff, and I don't know. I think it's, if they did things, if they made work that's so super separated from what they did in their personal life, it's a lot easier. But when it feels like they almost picked projects based on it, like that's, and like maybe that didn't happen, but sometimes with Spacey and even Bill Cosby, it feels that way. Or just if you know about like scary, awful things that they did to people, women, children, men, whatever it is, and then you're imagining them on set with people that are reminding you of their victims, that gets difficult, right? I can't go back to the Cosby Show because I don't want to see that guy on set with kids. It bothers me, and I realize he didn't do stuff to kids, but it bothers me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I mentioned this when we did the rewind on X2.
Yeah.
But I have no issue going back to the good X-Men movies. But in X2 specifically, there is a part of me that shudders a little bit whenever we cut to the kid with the green tongue, and I don't even know why. It's not
interesting.
Specifically a thing with that. But it's just like a weird part of my brain that's oh, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and this is just base human condition stuff, right? I don't always feel great about this, but I will admit that it's easier when it's a writer or a director if it's somebody behind the camera.
No, that's absolutely true. Yeah, unless it's just really hardcore in the themes of what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you could maybe argue with X2 because it's about them kind of taking the kids, but I don't know. I think that movie is so. It doesn't dwell on that as a plot point. That's obviously where we're going, but it's not we're oh man, we got to get those kids.
No, with something like that, it's kind of, and then we'll move on from this. But with something like that, it's maybe, in that case, it maybe is more about the hypocrisy, where it's here's Bryan Singer using mutation as the bigotry with mutation as a metaphor for being harassed and people being bigoted against gay people, and then look what he did to men. It's really. It's really hypocritical. Yeah. That's where I have a tough time with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
where it's he's making this big grand statement.
He is Stryker.
Wow, yeah, but I mean he's making this big grand statement, and then anyway.
Yeah.
Stone Gasman, $5 super chat. Thanks, man. Bassinger was reportedly drawn from 40s femme fatale Veronica Lake, and of course, she's supposed to be cut to look like her. That's what we're told in the movie. But closer scrutiny shows her more like Rita Hayworth from The Lady of Shanghai. Yeah, the sense I got was that they were just kind of generically looking for someone that looked old Hollywood enough. And I bought that with her.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly didn't find anybody too distracting in this movie that I recognized and knew really well. That wasn't really even Danny DeVito. He was just right for that part.
Mm-hmm. No, I was always happy when Danny DeVito was there because Danny DeVito's always great.
What did you think of Bassinger's performance?
I thought she was pretty good. I do think she worked as that kind of obviously it's not femme fatale in the way I thought going into it. But I thought she worked in her role. Like you said, I liked all the actors in this.
Well, she's really misguided, right? She thinks she's helping Russell Crowe, but she's actually a pawn in a larger game, like everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and she ends up kind of being a little bit more tragic than you kind of think early on.
Yeah, she's she's sort of like Jessica Rabbit with
Sure.
with the patty cake scene. No, it's sort of the same thing.
Fair enough. I haven't seen that in so long, so I didn't even remember that.
Sort
But
of
yeah.
go back to that. Matthew Bass, $5
Yes,
super
light
chat.
stimming.
I like this movie, but I always felt the ending was way too clean and Hollywood, for lack of a better term. Oh, thanks for putting that in a super chat, because he wrote that at the start of the show, and I was going to lead with it, and I completely forgot about it. So anyway, really nice of you to put that in as a super chat, because I like that comment, and I wanted to talk about it. Austin, I kind of agree with him.
No, that's another Shane Black thing I was thinking of. Was I think it's the end of the first Lethal Weapon, where it's like, oh, the bad guy's just gonna come onto the line, I'm gonna beat him up, and then I win. It kind of has that kind of like a clean.
That's not what was too easy about it. I actually liked that because of the tension of, is Russell Crowe, or I'm sorry, not Russell Crowe. What's his name? The guy with the glasses.
Oh, Guy Pearce.
Is Guy Pearce going? I'm not even talking about character names. Spacey's name is Jack. I remember that.
Captain Stacy's name is
Smith.
Dudley.
Dudley Smith. Yes.
We know Spacey and Stacy. We got them down.
Yep, we got that. Anyway, no, I really liked the kind of the conundrum he has there with, like, am I gonna shoot him? Am I not? Like, because he's trying to be, in his way, like, as above board as possible. He doesn't want to be part of any of the corruption, and in order to save himself and save the department, by the end of the movie, he ultimately does have to allow himself to be part of the corruption, which is the real kind of sad, cynical message at the end, is that like, you cannot single-handedly fix a broken system from the inside, and he does it for all the right reasons, kind of, but there's this really sad moment, right, with the interrogation at the end when he starts laughing, because I interpreted that as not just, I found a way to get away with this, but I know I'm gonna have to be part of now the same corrupt system that Captain Stacy, that Smith, the kingpin guy, was perpetuating, was the head of, in order to even hold any of this together, and so that I am not going to be the scapegoat and get thrown in prison for it. So I really loved that moment where he very nearly, because if he hadn't killed Smith, I'm not 100% sure what would have happened. Like, I don't think Smith would have been able to drum up enough evidence or anything to, like, pin the whole conspiracy on him somehow. So I kind of think that they would have gone back to the station, and they would have kind of continued on as usual until Smith could figure out some way to kill him covertly, is probably what would have happened. So he still would have had to look over his shoulder and stuff.
See, I just imagine it would be like the other cops would show up and he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm the captain of the police. Look at these cops are crazy. Shoot them." And they probably would have been killed there.
Oh yeah,
but...
no, that might have happened too. So it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, in that moment, he might be choosing between his life and his integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Or just,
that was my assumption.
Just doing the right thing. It's hard to say. But anyway, that's not what I thought was too easy about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know if Matthew has the same thing, because my issue was simply, and I just think thematically and narratively, this would have maybe been better for the story. I thought Russell Crowe was dead, and I didn't like that he lived.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was my big thing. When he's in the car at the end and he gets to go off with Vicky Vale, I was like, that's too easy. Like, now they get to... I mean, okay, what I like about it is that those two guys become real honest-to-God friends, and you can really see, like, what they've been through and the camaraderie with them, and that's all great. But I'm kind of think I prefer not to rewrite the story or anything, but this is what I thought it was. I kind of like the idea that this corrupt system is like is like picking these guys off one by one, and the one guy that didn't allow himself to really be corrupted has to be corrupted by the end to some degree.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. I think I just didn't have that because like early on in the movie, I just looked it up, and
I just spoiled myself at the beginning of the movie. Austin's the kind of person that reads the last page of a book.
No, so I looked it up and I was like, oh, they almost made a sequel to this movie in 2020, and Russell Crowe and I think Guy Pearce were both supposed to come back for it. So I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
we need
so
to talk about
he's
that.
not gonna die. It's like I didn't have that. My whole thing was just I was like, oh my god, he probably has like no teeth here because he got shot in the mouth.
That's true.
That's horrifying.
Can we just agree real quick that the action at the very end with that climax is thrilling? Like, that's all great.
Oh, it's great. I don't know if you ever played the original Resident Evil 4, but it reminded me of like the house. There's like a part where you're like stowed in a house and zombies are breaking through. Zombies, they're not exactly zombies, but anyways.
Yeah.
And it's basically the climax of this, and I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Oh, cool.
It's great.
All that stuff is just like really well executed all the way through this.
Yeah, 100%.
This is
not
one of those
stories I would have expected too. Like it's very light on that stuff.
No, I mean, obviously the subject matter is super dark, but there's nothing that's hard to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I just the balance between between style and realism is one of the most impressive things about it, because it doesn't get idealized or rose-tinted glasses about the 50s at all. But then in its way, it still feels like a movie. You know what it feels like, Austin? Like this is one of those movies that really stands the test of time. There's things about it that you could argue are kind of 90s just in like quality of the production, but it's not really a 90s movie. Like in some ways, it kind of feels like, again, except for like some stylistic cinematography choices maybe, and color palette and stuff, it kind of feels like the movie that you might have made in the 50s, like contemporarily, about this material, if only you didn't have to worry about a ratings board and censorship or anything.
I don't know if I have that, but just because it's so built around like this kind of period that it was in, like it's obviously, you know, like throwback stuff, but like, you know, I don't know if you get this without like Shane Black and Tarantino and a lot of that stuff.
That's
so it
true
gets so
too.
kind of built into that kind of obviously this isn't like indie, but you know what I mean, like that kind of.
But I think subject matter
and
some of the plotting and stuff, it feels like, I don't know how to articulate this. It feels like it's trying to expose stuff that was really happening then, that some people in that time period would have loved to have talked about, that wouldn't have been able to. I guess that's what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, that's possible.
Danny DeVito's monologue at the beginning of the film really speaks to that, where it's like, here's Hollywood. Here's journalism, and like the way we write about it and the way we fictionalize it, we're trying to create this like hunky-dory perfect feeling world, and it isn't really like that. And I just thought the movie captured that idea wonderfully, and it was really sad and tragic, because in some ways I imagine if you grow up really idealistic like one of our main characters in this, and then you see how the world really is, but it's like, you know, sugar coated real hard with, you know, like the Leave It to Beaver of it all and all of that, and you're living in a world where people generally act a lot more formal than what we're used to now. It's maybe even like harder to live in that and process it, because everything would feel so fake. You know what I mean? Like we live in, I mean, I don't like the opposite extreme, which is what I think we kind of have now. You know what I mean? This kind of cynical world where everybody just knows everything is awful. But in some ways, like this is more of kind of that Matrix thing where it's like, here's this, uh, we're gonna pretend like, there's hope, and American dream still exists, and everybody can, has the potential to be whatever they want to be, but ultimately there's really just one guy at the top that's pulling all the strings.
Mhm.
And in some ways I think like when everybody's dressing up nice and smiling all the time, and the world's not that nice. I think in some ways that's worse. And I just thought this movie really captured that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, no, you put it perfectly.
I'm sure I could have said that in far fewer words, but anyway.
It wouldn't be the show or channel if you could.
That's true. Chewbacca's Lover, $2 super chat. Bryan Singer's victim was pyro and teens, not kids.
I mean, I refer to teens as kids because they're kids.
Right.
But,
that's all. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
What does he mean by pyro? Is he just not like what was done with pyro?
Well, I assume he just means like that actor.
Pyro's
Maybe, I don't know.
Was that one of his alleged victims? I haven't looked deep into that, but
yeah, I'm sure.
Hey, it's our fault for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. More likely, Jessica Rabbit is based on characters like Kim Basinger's. Well, I mean, this movie is almost 10 years after that. But if you just mean characters similar to hers, sure. Mm-hmm. But Basinger did play Hollywood in Cool World. I forgot she was in Cool World. I've never seen that movie. She was an animated seductress. That's really funny though, that she's like the Jessica Rabbit counterpart in a movie that is a lot more adult and raunchy, but looking at Roger Rabbit. That's funny. I didn't know that, or I had forgotten about that.
Well, who's the lead actor in Cool World? Isn't that somebody?
I don't remember. I've got that back here because it's based on a comic, but
yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, it's all looking back at that kind of old noir stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've got another stream we're doing tonight here in just a little bit. Quick plug if you're watching live for that. We're going to be doing the 5th part of the of our Superhero Rewind impromptu history of superhero movies. So join us for that if you're so inclined. Austin, what else do we need to bring up about this movie that we haven't talked about yet?
Oh, I was shocked that Danny DeVito died, and I was shocked that Spacey died, but I also cheered after he died. I was like, yeah. There was an initial, like, what?
I was surprised by how sympathetic the movie made me feel for his character before he died. The whole thing with the 50 is really good visual storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Well, just the way he goes out reminded me of, like, a Coen Brothers movie, or, like, The Departed, like, something like that.
Yeah, remind me how exactly he dies now.
He's talking to Captain Stacy, and then Captain Stacy.
Oh yeah,
it's like it's very just like whoa.
He's amazing because I didn't see that coming. Well, and that's the big reveal for the audience that he's behind any of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then you start in your mind. I mean, I think the movie is challenging its audience in just the right way. Where like it's a lot to keep up with, but and it doesn't hold your hand too much, but it's really logically presented and it's pretty linear, which really helps. Like I was glad, I'm glad I thought to mention this. This is one of those movies that I could have totally seen, and Tarantino would have probably done it this way. Not to knock Tarantino, but told in something of a non-linear fashion. I was really glad they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Just because there's so many moving parts and the structure of it, just being more straightforward about it, is kind of perfect because you've already got these 3 different subplots that you don't know exactly how they're going to converge. Jumping between these 3 guys. I mean, they do keep interweaving, but I guess I should say you don't know just how much they're going to converge. Like how much of everything that's happening is all kind of being spearheaded by this one bad guy that you didn't even realize was the bad guy. And then when you get to that, you start to track it back and you go, oh, I get why he did this, in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then with DeVito, because we kept doing the narration thing, and like we would cut every now and then to like him typing a story, and I was like, oh, is this gonna be like a thing, like he's kind of typing up like the book, like he's turning the story into like a book or something, and he's making it into an article. So when he died, I was like, oh, I guess not.
I guess it's not that. Yeah.
I guess it's not that.
No, good call. It is kind of surprising that didn't turn out to be a framing device.
Mm-hmm. That's the I couldn't think of the
but I'm glad,
framing device.
But I'm glad that they weren't using that device like too much, all the way through, because it would have been really awkward if like he's narrating, I mean, he wasn't narrating what exactly was happening, but like talking too much about things, and then suddenly he dies, and it's like, well, where's this voiceover now? Like,
well,
he could have handed it off to somebody.
Pass the baton.
Yeah.
His voice work is some of the most like Shane Blackey dialogue. Like there's the part where it's like, oh, did he do it? And the guy gets shot. He's like, oh, I guess not.
Yeah, it was also kind of interesting just seeing kind of the really early days of what would become like the paparazzi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And all of that, like you have corruption at every level, and you're seeing all the ways that different institutions are in bed with each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're gonna do the kind of like seedy side of LA, like you gotta include the paparazzi, right?
Yeah,
the kind of like smutty journalism stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in a detective thriller like this, very often the cliche. And I mean, it works in a lot of things, but like the obvious thing to do is to make your eyes in character like above board journalist that's trying to get to the bottom of everything. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we didn't do that. We're following cops that are some of them seedy, some of them not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But again, all of them deeply flawed.
Mm-hmm. No, this is like if you took out Lois Lane and replaced her with Danny DeVito. It's awesome.
Sure, yeah, it's just like that.
Exactly.
It's like if you took out Lois Lane and you replaced her with the Penguin.
Just the story I was looking for.
But both of those two guys that you're left with by the end, I mean, they're incredibly well drawn, and they're really interesting foils for each other, and I somehow did not expect them to be like deep close friends at the end the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I'm saying that actually was one of my favorite things about this movie. Maybe I am glad that Russell Crowe doesn't die. But I still feel like thematically it's maybe the better choice.
I mean, if I had like my teeth shot out, I think I would wish that I was dead.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get going now, but everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Once again, whether you watched live or after the fact, we sure appreciate it. Next time, okay, so Bill Mills asked for a comic arc from a series. I told him that we would do it, but I don't want to open the floodgates for this, okay? So let me just preface this by saying two big things, okay? First of all, Eric is not coming back to the channel. And second of all, like, he just doesn't want to do it anymore, and people keep asking me about it, and it's not going to happen, everybody. I'm sorry about that. I can't make him. He's got other things to do. And secondly, I do not plan to go back to where we left off and finish Ultimate Spider-Man with anybody else. But Bill Mills asked for an arc from that. So we are going to go ahead and fulfill that, but I don't want to open the floodgates where people keep trying to get me to go to the same series moving forward, because I just can't keep everything in my brain like every 3-4 months. And I've been lately asking people not to, if they request regularly, to keep going back to the same thing. So yeah. I'm going to make an exception with Ultimate Spider-Man because people have been begging me to get back to that series, and those tend to be not too difficult to talk about even if it's been a while since I've read them. So I will do that. We're supposed to do Ultimate Clone Saga. That might have been the very next one. I'm not sure. I actually have read that already from when I was doing that with Eric, but I did not get a video out about it.
I'm trying to remember. I think the last one you guys have posted is like 15 or 16, and I want to say that's like 19 or 20. So I think it's like a little bit
after.
off. Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and fulfill this, and like the thing is, I just don't want to promise anything. Like maybe at some point, if Austin and I can find the time, he and I can go back and do the rest of that series if he wants to. But I don't want to promise it. How well do you know that stuff?
So that's some of the first comic book stuff I was reading as a kid.
I thought you'd read all of that.
But I always drop off like shortly after Bagley leaves. Like that's a book where I'm like, I don't know, like that's so much a part of what I like about that series. Like it just feels weird when he's gone.
Yeah.
So like I haven't read any of the like when it becomes like Ultimate Comics, Spider-Man, or like anything after that. I feel like the Clone Saga is around one of the last arcs I read.
Okay. But yeah, so we'll do this, and then maybe at some point we'll try to revisit it, but I just don't want to promise that.
Yeah, definitely.
I probably should have said no to that, but I didn't.
But I've probably read the first volume and the third volume like 8,000 times because they were like the first two that I owned.
Really?
So it was like, oh, like I want to read a comic, and I own like 4 comics, like. But yeah, so I know that series pretty well.
Yeah, those early days when you only have like a few comics and you just read the same ones over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why I read Long Halloween and Hush as many times as I did, because they were like 2 of the first Batman like trades I got.
It's so weird to imagine, and I don't collect as hard as I used to, but it's hard to imagine the really early days when I was, like 12, 13, and I had like a box of comics.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's weird, right?
Like that's crazy. It's crazy to think that at one time my whole collection fit in like a file cabinet.
It's also weird to me to think that there was a time where I had read every comic I owned. Now I'm like perpetually like trying to catch up.
I'll never have that. I'll never read every comic I own.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because a lot of them are in like disparate arcs, and I don't have the whole run of the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you collect issues, and I've never really done that.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, a lot of stuff I could read digitally, so I could read all the stuff around it, even if I don't own it. But like, that's a lot of books. I'm never gonna have the time to do all of that. Mm-hmm. It's not gonna happen. Anyway. Everybody, thanks for watching. Austin, appreciate you, man. This is a great movie. Would this go in your Hall of Fame?
No, no, it would.
yeah, it would for me too, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, this is in my top 10.
We keep talking about this. I don't know where the cutoff is with it. If it's like only a certain number of movies get to be there, or if you were scoring it, it would be past a certain score. But I don't know, just based on my enjoyment of this and how almost objectively it's a really great piece.
For me it's just not
fair to say objectively. It's just one of the best looking movies I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's just like, would I watch it again and would I buy it? And yeah,
I would do both of those things. I wonder if Criterion's released this one, because that's one that would be really cool to have a Criterion for.
Possibly, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, anyway, I'll look into that at some point and see what the releases are like. So folks, Austin and I will be back in about 10 or 15 minutes if you're watching live for our next show, and we're going to prattle on about superhero movie history and see if we can get past 2008 this time.
I don't know. I saw the thumbnail as Avengers. I don't know if we'll make it there.
We're going to see. I think we will.
Hopefully.
I think we will. Anyway, once again, appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Bye, everybody. See you in 5 seconds.
See you, folks.